You're listening to eLearnChat, where talk is knowledge.
Hello and welcome to eLearnChat, our new podcast featuring prominent leaders, shakers and movers in the e-learning and training industry. Your co-hosts are Rick Zanotti and Terrence Wing.
Hi everyone, I'm Rick Zanotti, and this is eLearnChat, where talk is knowledge. Today we are joined by a very special person, but before we introduce her, let me introduce you to our co-host, Terrence Wing.
Hi everybody, great to be here on another Tuesday in Southern California.
Terrence is our wingman. He is always there, always ready, and he's got our flank.
Always.
And today we have a special guest from Southern California, in or around Southern California. She moves her secret locations all over the place. She is the owner of Ridgeview Media, which you can see her website right here, and please visit her website. She also has a pretty good blog at www.ridgeviewmedia.com. And who is our special guest? She is our go-to girl when we have needs, and that is Jenise Cook. Hi, Jenise. How are you?
Good morning, Rick. Good morning, Terrence. Thank you. It's good to see you
Jenise.
this morning.
We've actually all worked with...
We're glad to have you here.
Yeah, we've all worked with Jenise in the past, and she's an instructional designer, a blogger, a voiceover talent, and now an on-camera talent to boot. So we're getting her out there. How do you like being famous?
Well, we're not getting her video feed just in TV there, so we've got to fix that. We're just getting a black screen.
That's odd.
Yeah. But I see her there in the 3-shot, so we might have to stick with a 3-shot.
I've gone undercover, Terrence.
If I go back to this one, you don't see her? Do you see her here?
I see me.
Yeah, she's in the 3-shot. We're having some feed issues with Justin. I can tell the screen is getting a little bit delayed.
Okay, I'm in the 1-shot right now for Jenise.
Okay. Now she's there. There she is.
Okay, we may be having some latency and delay. That usually happens whenever you go live. Now. But anyway, for everyone who's wondering, this is a live show. So live means all sorts of strange and eerie things can happen. And so we have to really kind of watch what goes on while we're live. Yes, that happens. We have an uncontrolled audience too. Well, anyway, today our topic is. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Terrence.
We've got two people. We've got two people in the chat room too. So anybody who is in the chat, just say hi to us so that we know you're there. And anytime anybody has any questions for Jenise, I'll be monitoring that chat window as well as on Twitter. You can use the hashtag #eLearnChat, and we'll make sure to get those questions to Jenise.
And in fact, right now we have our Twitter chat up. This is eLearnChat. If you do, like Terrence said, hashtag eLearnChat, you should be able to see what we're seeing right there. You can see Terrence and Jenise have tweeted. And we can be twit sometimes, but we're tweeting right now.
Yeah, definitely.
So anyway, Jenise, today we're going to talk about instructional design, I guess in social media and also just in general, things about instructional design. One of my things is always, why is instructional design so boring? Why do you think so much e-learning out there is just flat out boring?
Do I dare answer that question? That's a loaded question.
You're on the hot seat.
I know. Gee, thanks, Rick.
Just don't put any names in there. We'll be safe.
Exactly. From my experience, the instructional design audience, our colleagues, are very, very creative people. And many times in-house corporate situations, or if they're an independent consultant like I am, you're always dealing with your client, whether it's a client you contract with or if it's your internal clients when you're in a corporation, either private or public sector. There are always people who are called stakeholders that you answer to who over a process of time, need to be convinced that creative instructional design for adult learners works. So I've seen that as business relationship issues that it takes time to develop to change the minds of those who sign off on the e-learning courses. That's a real delicate diplomatic way to say instructional designers have design battles to fight in their organizations sometimes, where people are used to seeing in instructor-led training, facilitator guides and the instructor up front. So when it comes to e-learning, they still see that book online, that linear book online. So it takes time. But there are instructional designers perhaps in our audience this morning who are with open-minded creative organizations, and they get to be as creative as they want to be within the learning methodologies that are at our disposal. Phew! How was that for a political answer?
That was good. And I'm not so political, so I can actually get worse about this. But
no.
I think you're right. A lot of it is the organization, the management, how they perceive e-learning. And Terrence and I have talked about this. A lot of people have. A lot of companies do training not because they want to, it's because they have to. So as a result, they don't care if it's good or bad. They just need to do it for compliance or whatever other reason. And that creates that kind of, we're not going to put anything good out. We're just going to put something that makes the management happy so that compliance is met. We are, doing what we're supposed to do, and life is good. The problem is, are people really learning from that?
Right, and that's where I encourage instructional designers. I know we're passionate about what we do. We really love it. Our work is fun. Is to go ahead and use your free time. Let's say you've completed a compliance course for your organization, and it's pretty cut and dry. It really does help to use your free time, nights, weekends, of course, work around your family, your loved ones, so they don't feel neglected.
Are you saying that a compliance course can be dry?
Compliance dry, yeah. Is to take that course, perhaps, let's say if there's 3 topics, take one topic and use your personal time to redesign it the way that if you had been given a blank check for effective learning, go ahead and recreate it, whatever your favorite e-learning tool is, and then you can, in a safe, non-combative way, present it to management and just say, hey, I just want to show you how things can work. I have seen that happen. Some organizations change more quickly than others. It takes time. It takes diplomacy. It takes showing samples. And when they do see that you create those samples on your own time, they know that you have a commitment to your organization, that you want to make learning better each year, each time a course comes out. And if they don't listen to you, you polish up your resume and go find a new job. I'm kidding.
Maybe not today.
No, I know.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
But there are creative organizations out there.
There are.
Yeah.
One of the problems with creativity is many times, and Terrence is a good example of proving this wrong. Many times there's the illusion of creativity being extremely expensive, and it doesn't have to be. In fact, that kind of brings up what Terrence has been crusading against, which is the destruction of all vendors who charge too much for avatars. So Terrence, talk a little bit to us about how you can make creative e-learning not that expensive.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with the character of the e-learning designer, where if you've kind of matured in an environment where you've had a big budget, you've never really been forced to find these corners to cut to make it happen. But for those of us who have worked in environments where you had to make PowerPoint look like Flash, then you find ways of meeting that demand, that client demand, and not using any additional financial resources in order to do it. And I know you got a real kick out of the avatar that I built, where you could spend upwards of $10,000 on a avatar building program, and the avatars they're okay. I mean, when you look at the leader in that category, their avatars, I won't use any names, but their avatars, they're cute, but they're a little awkward looking. They're not as realistic as they could be. So in that particular case, I went into Second Life. I set up a virtual green screen, and I shot an avatar, a Second Life avatar, which are very dynamic looking avatars, and shot that in front of a green screen, imported it into an e-learning course, and now I have an avatar for free instead of spending $10,000 on it. So there's a lot of great tools out there that help us meet the learning goals that we want to meet without breaking our budget or even impacting our budget at all.
And keeping the training pretty interesting at the same time.
Absolutely.
One thing that a lot of people don't like to use, and actually they like to use it, but they're afraid of it, and that's video. And video is not as expensive as people think. In fact, a lot of times video is more cost effective than actually doing a ton of graphic arts and everything else, because video is more dynamic and fluid, and you can film just about anywhere, any place, anytime, and you can go green screen, you can go non-green screen. It requires a little bit of knowledge, but you can do a lot of that without having to spend a fortune. If you think about courses, if you can bring video into it or avatars or anything else to liven it up a little bit, it'll definitely make it more interesting.
It does, and even if I can add on, for those who have really limited budgets where you can't purchase photos, so you want to use photos of employees. We had situations where the legal department and human resources said, nope, you can't use photos of actual employees.
Because then
obviously
they'd
for
have
the
to pay
reason
them after that,
what
right?
if they're no longer with the company? So just on a lark, we threw something out there thinking, okay, they're not going to be open to this idea either. Is the idea we proposed, and it was accepted, was to use the look with web comics, and we were amazed. The way we designed it, the background, it was very professional but fun, and it created a sense of engagement that became pretty popular. So don't rule out web comics either.
No, and actually they're effective,
Yeah.
and people like comics, and they can get used to the comic paradigm, and sometimes they can be really funny.
Yeah.
Oh, humor in pieces. That's another thing that can add creativity to it. So you have to be careful what kind of humor, but you can add a little bit of something that maybe to a corporation might be funny. I mean,
Right.
if you're doing generalized e-learning, that probably wouldn't work. But if you're doing, or let's say to the overall public, because everybody's got so many sensitivities, we're all very sensitive now. But if am I getting politically incorrect again?
Well, and that's where a person's, let's say they're in the private sector or even public sector, your human resources representative. I have 12 plus years experience in HR and human resources in the United States. So befriend your HR people. There are nice people in human resources and run the script by them. You have the attorneys, and they're one group to deal with, but in human resources, they can sometimes override the legal department and help you develop dialogue with humor that's appropriate for your organization. I've found that they're very helpful. Having been a human resources person.
So what are you saying? You're a little biased then?
No, because I've also bumped heads with my HR colleagues.
Okay.
Yeah, and when you've worked in that field, you're allowed to do that because you understand each other. But there truly are things in terms of, Rick had mentioned sensitivities, that we found even when we had the budget to use photos, that gestures with hands had to not use certain photos with certain hand gestures, because if you had a global organization in another culture, what we in the United States thinks is a real simple, like thumbs up gesture or the okay with your fingers, in other countries would be offensive. So
Yes, the OK, I actually ran into that one once. The OK actually symbolizes that you are part of a posterior, which is not very good for some people. And
Right.
I'm saying, okay, this is great, and I'm getting back, why do you think I'm a... And it was not good.
a bleep bleep.
Yes, a bleep bleep. Yes.
Well, Jenise, it looks like too that we've known each other for I guess a couple of years now, and I've noticed that recently you've really sort of upped your game with social media, and in particular with Twitter, where I've seen you really have a focused, I guess, strategy for tweeting tips on instructional design or tips on career development. But I can really get a sense that your Twitter is almost a specific channel with a specific goal in mind. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you try to accomplish with your social media presence.
Well, my Twitter addiction is, pretty soon going to be addressed in a 12-step group. Actually, about a year or so ago, I was completely adverse to the idea of using Twitter. I had a presence on LinkedIn and very, very happy with LinkedIn. I still use it, and didn't have a presence on Facebook. And some colleagues were encouraging me. And I looked at their Twitter feeds, and they were tweeting about which cafe they'd been to, which coffee they were having at Starbucks. And I said, this is ridiculous. It's a waste of time. What's Twitter worth? And especially when you saw celebrities, what's his name, Ashton Kutcher and some others. I don't follow Hollywood, but I thought people were just wasting time on Twitter. Until I finally signed up and got an account and did a search on the words e-learning or learning, training, and there was this huge audience out there of our colleagues, our instructional design and human performance improvement, workplace performance improvement professionals. And I started following their tweets before I actually began to participate and collaborate. And yeah, you're right, Terrence. I call it my Twitter addiction, but really it is a fantastic tool. I still like to blog, but I think Twitter is better than blogging for that immediate contact with our colleagues and immediate feedback, that collaboration, sharing. I have seen people have many situations or issues resolved through Twitter. They tweet whatever their issue is. Let's say it's with an e-learning course, they need some ideas, or there's a technical issue they need resolved. And instant feedback instead of having to wait anywhere from 24 to 72 hours to get a response back from anybody. So yeah, I'm addicted. I love Twitter.
Now, how has it helped you in regards to instructional design?
People have tweeted ideas that thankfully, and this is where I think Twitter truly has a value, and blogging still matters, is connect the two, is that I will follow someone's tweet where they will have a link to their blog post regarding a particular instructional design. Let's say webcomics, for example. I can't think of a particular colleague's name, but they tweeted on Twitter, hey, here's my blog post about using webcomics effectively in e-learning. And you click the URL, and you go from 140 characters to whatever they wrote, let's say 250 words in their blog post with links to other resources. So that's how it has helped me. General articles, ASTD, the e-learning guild, ISPI, some of our colleagues who've been in the instructional design world for decades definitely share their expertise through Twitter with links to their blog post. So it's like having this online library readily accessible. And I can always go back through my Twitter stream. I click favorites if there's particular articles that I want to make sure that I can easily get to. I indicate it as a favorite. So here I was, a person thinking Twitter was only used to tell people which Starbucks you were at and what kind of coffee you were drinking, to a very valuable resource. In fact, Rick, I think, isn't that how you and I first got in contact? I think it was through Twitter.
We actually met through Twitter. You were posting something, and I contacted you to find out where you were and what kind of work you did, and subsequently we worked together.
Yes.
So that was through Twitter. I met Terrence indirectly through Twitter, through another colleague. And I've honestly, I used to be very lonely, and now I'm just much better off. No, seriously. It is really amazing how many friends and colleagues you can make from Twitter that have actually made a difference. I poo-pooed Twitter totally. I thought it was a complete waste of time until about a year ago, and a couple of people said, now take a look at it from a business perspective. I was thinking, I really don't care what people are having for breakfast or lunch or dinner or whatever else, or what store they're going into at the moment. But there's a vibrant business community there. And, getting back to Terrence's question of how instructional design was motivated by Twitter, or how maybe it improved your instructional design, some of my biggest influences were the folks from Articulate. For example, Tom Coleman, Dave Anderson. Mm-hmm. They put out some great screeners, and they put out some great blogs with just some tremendous ideas. And they're simple, and yet those ideas can really make a course a lot more interesting. And so that's where I saw the benefit of Twitter, and how everybody's sharing ideas and sharing techniques to make things a little bit better. And it becomes a lot of fun, and we all share in the same thing. I mean, if you think about it, everybody's in competition, yet everybody's collaborating, and that's good, because we all grow from it. I still run into people who refuse to go on Twitter, or refuse to do any kind of social media or share, because we don't want to give away the family secrets. And for the most part, you're losing the richness of what's out there.
And for example, again, to refer to what I mentioned previously, that our instructional design colleagues who might be behind very tight firewalls and cannot access Twitter during work hours, which I totally understand, is very important to protect confidential client information. But again, there's always your free time. And we do have commitments in the community and with our loved ones, but there's usually an hour or two each week where you as an instructional designer can devote to your own personal and professional growth. So you get on Twitter, maybe if it's just 1 hour once a week, you can use the Twitter hashtags like hashtag or # eLearnChat or # LearnChat, # eLearning, and just do a targeted search, and you can get away from all the fun stuff that's out there on Twitter to focus on instructional design tweets and see what people are talking about. What is the conversation? Follow the links, read the blogs. It's really on-demand learning for us as professionals. And in this world where things are changing so quickly, I mean, look at us, the three of us on this video live stream. I wouldn't have imagined me participating in something like this 12 months ago. Twitter can help people get there. And again, use your personal time. If you feel your organization may have things too locked down, and a lot of times there's very valid reasons why, schedule time for yourself. You deserve it.
And Lily was just saying in the chat room that she, for a while, her college had actually banned Twitter from the campus. And there are definitely institutions and organizations, not just academic, but private, corporate as well, that don't quite see the value in microblogging, and they're setting up the Twitter Nazis, and stopping. As best they can, trying to stop, the tweet feeds from getting or penetrating through their organization. But the bottom line, when you look at this from an organizational structure, is that you can't stop it. It's a back channel. It's always going to exist. And now with the emergence of really effective mobile tools like our cell phones, we can access our network via Twitter, via Facebook, via MySpace, whatever social media tool we have of our choice. And it doesn't matter what the company allows in front of or behind their firewall because we have a back channel through our cell phones now. So instead of companies spending and making such, or organizations putting such an effort around governance and restriction of social media, what they should be doing is trying to open the doors to how can we use this to our advantage. And I'm not talking simply about a marketing advantage, but a learning advantage where there's an incredible wealth of knowledge that's being shared. And every time a corporation puts a wall up to block that, they're doing themselves more damage than good.
It will definitely take a culture shift, especially in how people work, because it's true, managers will probably see, between the hours of 8 to 5 time on Twitter as, well, you're not really working, you're goofing off. So again, the burden of proof is on us as instructional designers to use the new social media tools and document from a business perspective what we are gaining from it and how it's applied in our jobs in the workplace and how it can positively affect the organization. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of corporate speak, but that's reality. Managers have customers to please. If they're public, they have shareholders, stockholders to satisfy. So whatever social media tools that we're using to increase our knowledge and our networking connections, we still have to tie it back to the business's bottom line, their goals, their objectives. In other words, the language that's meaningful to them, we need to take what we're getting as a benefit from social media and translate it into their language so that they understand how it works. I haven't tried it yet, but I think there's a behind the firewall Twitter tool called Yammer, and I think it's yammer.com. And also through Twitter, I got connected to an old colleague of mine who works with financial services industries, specifically brokerages. And I'm going to go ahead and promote his product. I don't get any money for this, but they actually archive tweets for financial institutions. His product is called Arkovi, ARKOVI.com. And he's seeing an increase in corporations which have been afraid of using Twitter. They're again starting to see the value, and he's created a tool to help them for federal regulatory compliance standpoints archive those tweets just in case they might be needed in the future. But again, as instructional designers, Twitter as well as LinkedIn, for example, for me, has given me access to Dr. Allison Rosette from down in San Diego, Donald Clark, great instructional designer up in the Pacific Northwest, Dr. Jane Hart in the UK. It's amazing, people who you never thought you would ever meet in your lifetime, and you buy their books or go to their seminars, you send them a tweet and they tweet you back. Twitter has really created this very open, collaborative social media community that even though if your corporation has a strong firewall and you can't access it during the day, you are worth it. Use some of your personal time, your free time, and get involved. Create a Twitter account and just start watching what people are tweeting about regarding e-learning, and then slowly start to participate and, for your comfort level. But I'd say that would be your personal learning goal for 2011 is put that on your personal plan. Get started, but document how you are learning and changing and growing so you can present it to your management.
Now, beyond Twitter, and Twitter is a fantastic tool. I love it. It's I always think of my social media in three phases, where the first phase is the construct phase, where whatever I'm trying to share, I start building it, whether it's a blog post, whether it's a video, whatever the actual media is, and then I usually post it somewhere like YouTube. So the next step, or Facebook, the next step would be to create an aggregate. And then the third step is to communicate it out. And Twitter seems to be my tool of choice to communicate out. And one of the reasons is because it's an open network where you can literally access, I don't know what the numbers are up to. I think it's 50 million now. But you can literally access 50 million people with a little creativity, whereas most of the other social networks, you don't have that level of access to the community. You have to slowly build up your community, and you can access your community, but not necessarily go outside of that easily. So what other tools do you use, or have you seen used in other organizations that sort of help in the learning process or in the instructional design process, Jenise?
Actually, Skype and LinkedIn, as well as Twitter. As an independent consultant working from my virtual home office, when I have a client project, I am focused and dedicated working on that client project. So although there's this wealth of tools out there, my time constraints means I need to find the tools that are most effective for me. And I've connected with people on LinkedIn, and then we've connected with each other on Twitter, and then we share our Skype accounts. And on LinkedIn, for example, if I'm using the Articulate Studio suite of e-learning tools, there's a group on LinkedIn for Articulate users. Same with Captivate, same with Lectora. There's instructional design groups out there on LinkedIn. Those LinkedIn groups are almost like Twitter, not as immediate as Twitter, but I definitely access the LinkedIn groups, post a question. I've seen other people who are virtual independent consultants. They ask, hey, can I have your feedback? This is an idea I have for an e-learning course, and they'll post a URL, and right there in the LinkedIn group, whichever group it is, people will provide their feedback, which is when you're an independent, you don't have those colleagues and other cubicles around you. So that avenue of social media networking really helps out. And with Skype, I love it. It's you can immediately connect with people through instant message, phone chats. Yes, I've received new contracts. In other words, just to recap, there are a ton of different tools out there. I do want to explore them all, but because of time constraints and making sure I get the jobs done for my clients, my biggest tools are LinkedIn, Twitter, and Skype, and to a lesser degree, Facebook. Who knows, maybe 12 months from now, Facebook will have a larger percentage in terms of usage for me, but it's amazing when you make these connections online with other instructional designers. Bottom line is you don't have to limit it to just that one network, whether it's Twitter or LinkedIn. When you feel confident with that business relationship, you can share all your ways of contacting each other. And like I say, I have my Skype window, my Twitter window, my LinkedIn window open every day. And I feel like I'm connected to the world.
And every so often you open your house window too, right?
Oh, not today. It's kind of foggy, so it's a little cool. But yesterday and the day before, it was 80s summer weather in December. And it was, definitely had the windows open.
There's not a bad tool out there. It's just everybody has different applications for those tools. So, even though one instructional designer will use Twitter, another instructional designer may not see the value in Twitter, but they may use a different tool. And that's kind of the beauty of where we are right now in our social media universe, is that there are so many. I couldn't even count how many tools there are to use to help the learner. I've become, probably over the last maybe 6 months to a year, I've become a huge fan of the potential of Facebook as a learning tool. And it's, Facebook has the same stigma that Twitter had or has, in that people that are kind of regimented to look at it a certain way, they, don't see the living potential behind the organic tool. And Facebook, although most people would call it a content management system, because of the FBML application, Facebook can be easily converted to a learning management system. Not necessarily the greatest one, but still very effective, especially if you're trying to train customers where it doesn't have to be on a closed network, or certain topics that employees can share on an open network that it doesn't have to be behind a firewall. So there's some incredible potential, and we're starting to explore that on the ISD 2.0 fan page. We're starting to explore the learning potential a lot more.
Also, some of the groups, like, for example, ASTD, could take it more advantage of Facebook and
Sure.
all of the different media. I know ASTD meets on Twitter and has, I think, chapter meetings on Twitter and or group meetings. So, yeah, it's getting out there slowly but surely.
Yeah.
And for e-learning instructional designers, a huge value I've found is no matter which tool you use, whether it's Captivate, Articulate Studio, Lectora, Raptivity, use Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook to connect to your product vendor. For example, with Articulate, it kind of cracks me up because I feel like I bug them a lot. And I know other instructional designers do too, but the response is incredible. They have community managers and support team members on Twitter, on Facebook, so that as I'm developing a course and if I have a question and I need an answer right away because of a client deadline, I no longer have to go through the 1877 customer support phone number, whatever. I get responses rapidly. So for rapid e-learning, there's rapid customer support for me. And that's what I would encourage e-learning designers and developers to do is, yes, follow our favorite gurus in terms of instructional methodologies, but also add the people who are on staff with the product, the tool that you use. Because when you need to reach out, they're there for you. So the product vendors, the e-learning tool vendors have really embraced Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, so that they can stay in touch with us. And if there's an issue that we need resolved, you've got people right there at your fingertips as you're typing in your keyboard. So if you haven't yet connected with your e-learning tool vendor, do so. And it'll change your world. It'll make your life a lot easier.
In the chat, Lily is saying that she had a similar instance where a relationship had grown from a tweet to the point where it eventually morphed into a meeting on Skype with the person. So professional relationships and a professional network can definitely be expanded upon by simply a tweet. And in this case, Lily turned that professional relationship from one tweet to a face-to-face discussion on Skype.
Yes, and I've had a similar experience. And through those business relationships on Skype, I've had offers for contract work. So
we were one of those.
Yeah,
through Skype.
I know corporations have their firewalls, but
Sure.
for instructional designers, you have your personal time if you are not able to do it during your 8 to 5 or whatever work hours, is cultivate and develop those relationships. I mean, I know it sounds kind of funny, but in the Articulate community, there's Kevin Thorne, who's @Learn Nuggets. He's a great illustrator. So if you need somebody who can draw or design web comics for you, he's a great resource. And I tweeted with him back and forth, and I said, hey, can I add you to my Skype? And he said, sure. So most colleagues, when you see that it's on a professional basis and there's that element of trust there, people are pretty open to communicating using all the avenues that we have, at our fingertips. So I really encourage instructional designers, if you're in a situation where you really can't get involved in social media networking during business hours, there's your private time. Even if it's just an hour or two a week, start the investment now, document it, and show your managers after some time has gone by how it has benefited you, improved you as an instructional designer, and what you've learned that could enhance the learning at your organization.
Lily is asking, and Lily, if you can elaborate a little bit more on what you typed into the chat window. I'm not fully understanding the question, but it's saying that she started to have something on Twitter, and she wanted to know how to cope with that. So Lily, what if you can elaborate a little bit more on that in the chat window, that will probably help us get Jenise to answer that question.
And then after that question, we're going to have to wrap it up because we're hitting almost an hour already.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Sure. Yeah, I saw that she had kind of put in some space filler, some asterisks. I'm going to go ahead until we see her reply, kind of fill in. Be careful on social media. In fact, one of my clients, the protocolinstitute.com, we just finished a course on social media for professionals that we collaborated on. I did instructional design along with them, and then the development in Articulate Studio. Social media, the message is always present yourself in a professional manner. In Twitter, in fact, I need to go through my Twitter followers and clean some of it out. There are a lot of marketing types that just want to bug you with their tweets. Not necessarily about products that we use for e-learning. It could be buy gold, that kind of thing. We can block them on Twitter. Especially for professionals who are women, it's very important to guard your privacy and be very careful. But if there are any issues, LinkedIn, I've never had problems, but on Twitter, I haven't had problems. But you can block them, and you can report people who may be abusing Twitter. And let me see, did Lee give us more info? Unwanted tweets start misusing hashtags.
Yeah, you're kind of answering her question as you're speaking.
Good. That's good, Lee, that you block them and you report them. And yes, definitely report them. Get those people out of the Twitter stream.
Yeah, they're getting creative. Some of them are putting. It used to be they didn't have any of the avatars on on their image, but now they're starting to use images, and it looks like a tweet from somebody that you might receive a tweet from. So they are getting a little creative, but if you don't recognize the person, or if the conversation really doesn't seem normal, like they're saying something that you didn't initiate, then I would just ignore that tweet and make sure that you don't click on the hashtag, because usually the URL leads to some spam site.
Yes.
Some of the ones I hate the most are the ones that come out as if you've said the message.
Yeah.
And you had nothing to do with it. I had one from a vendor once, really irritating. They took a tweet I did, retweeted it, and changed the link to their website, which prompted a pretty nasty call on my part. That's so unprofessional. Plagiarism at the tweeter level, I guess, and really kind of raunchy marketing if you think about it.
Yeah, unfortunately that does happen, but thankfully I have not seen it happen a great deal. So, but there is that block button.
Well, there is our outro music. Jenise, I'm going to thank you for joining us today. We're going to have to wrap this one up because we will go on forever, and we can. We've done that on the phone many times. Terrence, as always, a big hug out to you, and thank you for being here. And for all of you watching, and either the live stream or the recorded, thank you very much. We appreciate all of you guys being here, and we will see you next week on eLearnChat, where talk is knowledge. Goodbye, everybody.
Take care.